Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to BSing Sports, where we do a little BSing and we talk a whole lot of sports. With me, as always, is my co-host Ryan. I'm Bill. And this week's show, we're going to talk about the NFL draft, kind of sort of just like scatter around conversationally. We don't really have a strict guideline to go on. We're just going to pretty much wing it here this week. So thank you for any of those or all of those that are with us right now live. And obviously, thank you to anybody who watches it later. Every single view is super important, so we appreciate all of it. And yeah, we're just going to get right on into it.
Especially thank you to those who have been here from the beginning. We've been doing this over a year now.
Correct. Over a year. We're about a year and almost 2 months in now. Just about 14 months.
It's been a long time.
It has.
And I'm still not tired of looking at you.
Me neither, little buddy. I mean, I could deal with less of you, but more of – no, I'm just kidding.
We should just get our dogs up here to do the show.
I could get Thor. He'd be hard to convince, but I could get him.
I could get Doc to sit in my lap. He would just lick my face the whole time, but nice apple juice you got there, Bill. Very, very nice.
Wonderful apple juice in a mug that my younger sister gave me for officiating her wedding several years ago.
So, kind of kick it off the top. Like, I'm a little surprised Trayvon Walker went number 1 overall. You know, I know he has the athletic ability, but he's still a little raw as a linebacker and pass rusher. I thought for sure that they would go Aiden Hutchinson, but there was kind of, rumors leading up to the draft that they wouldn't, and that he was very against going to Jacksonville. Aiden Hutchinson did, in fact, play at Michigan for college, and he did get drafted by Detroit at number 2, so he gets to stay at home.
Yeah, I also was surprised Trayvon Walker went first, but as you pointed out already, Aiden Hutchinson hadn't come out and openly admitted that he had distaste for Jacksonville. He just somebody behind the scenes had heard him say it, and then I suppose Jacksonville was a little bit turned off by him, so they go Trayvon Walker. Aiden Hutchinson, a phenomenal edge rusher from Michigan, as you said, gets to stay home, goes number 2. The first defensive back / real skill position player off the board. And I like this pick for the Houston Texans. Number 3 is Stingley Jr.
Yeah, I was really hoping that he fell to the Eagles in some form or fashion. I think they probably would have traded up for him if he was at the spot willing to be traded up for, but he just never fell far enough. And then I'm surprised that Sauce Gardner went right after him at number 4. You know, I thought for sure that there was going to be some a pick or two separation between those guys. Nope, they went one right after the other. Speaking of which, the Jets had an incredible draft.
Oh, the Jets.
I think they're the big winners of the draft.
Yeah, I would say the Jets probably are 1. The Chiefs are probably 2. The Chiefs had a great draft too.
Chiefs had a good draft. The Eagles had a good draft. We'll get into that a little bit in a second. But they had a winning draft by not drafting. We'll get into that.
We always do.
big losers. The Packers kind of look a little right now. The Saints are huge losers.
I'm pretty sure the Packers didn't even draft a wide receiver, did they?
No, they drafted Watson in the second round.
Okay.
But they're the big losers, in my opinion, are the Saints. So I'd say the huge winners are the Jets, the huge losers are the Saints. That's just my take on it.
That's a good take. It's a good take. Now, I mean, with the Saints, I do like Chris Olave, the receiver they took at number 11. Sorry, you good? Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, he pairs well with Winston. I like him a lot. I just, in general, I think that they're the big losers. They made quite a few trades that resulted in essentially nothing. I mean, I gotta find the picture again just to show you guys like how bad this was. But there was quite a few trades that they made. I got to bring up the results of it.
Yeah, they. All right. While he's doing that, I'll go through a little bit more of the picks that had happened. So at the number 5 pick, New York Giants get somebody that I was really excited and hoping that could fall somehow to the Eagles. There were a lot of guys I wanted the Eagles to draft, but Kayvon Thibodeau, edge rusher out of Oregon, I was really excited for him to come out in this draft. The Giants take him at 5. It's unfortunate that the Eagles got to play him twice a year. Panthers at number 6 go offensive tackle. Also, let's throw a really quick discussion in here between me and the fans while Ryan's looking up that thing. No running backs or quarterbacks taken one quarterback and no running backs taken in the first round. First quarterback off the board goes to Pittsburgh. Kenny Pickett gets to stay in Pennsylvania, in Pittsburgh specifically, after coming out of college at Pitt. It's the first time in NFL history that there have been that kind of a draft that has shaken out that way, with only one quarterback going in the first round and 0 running backs in the first round. So we witnessed history there this year at the NFL draft.
What do you think about what are you more surprised about, rather, one quarterback going in the first or no running backs going in the first?
I think I'm more surprised that no running backs going in the first.
Yeah.
You and I had discussed how.
Yeah, I mean,
several
Brees
teams
Hall
running
to
backs
Buffalo was kind of like almost set in stone. You know, the whole media hyped that up. Every fantasy manager alive hyped it up. You know, everybody really wanted that to happen, and it didn't. Brees Hall ended up being part of the Jets, best draft of 2022. He was picked very early in the second round, I think 34th overall.
Yes, 34th overall.
Yeah.
And Buffalo's first pick of the day goes to cornerback Cair Elam out of Florida. I actually did get to watch this kid because obviously Florida games are on my TVs all the time. And not because I'm particularly high on Florida college, just because I live in Florida. He's got good talent. He's got a big body. He's pretty quick, and he's going to be able to line up against receivers and shut them down pretty effectively. So, I mean, they get a good talent in Cair Elam. But again, we had discussed all offseason how Buffalo was really in need of a strong running back. And like you said, Brees Hall fell to them at 23, and they didn't go for him.
I think ultimately they made the right decision. I think Devin Singletary can do the job if he's given the chance to do the job. Now he'll get spelled out on passing downs most likely. James Cook is a very highly talented pass catching back, so I think he'll take a lot of the third down work. And it really all depends. Like, does Josh Allen even want to throw to his running backs? You know, he's got a huge arm. He's always looking to push the ball downfield. So is there even going to be a lot of work available for James Cook? We'll wait and see, but they went and supplemented running back while filling a position of need at cornerback number 2 and potentially cornerback 1 until Tre'Davious White returns from the torn ACL he had last year.
That is true. I do like the pick in James Cook. I watched a lot of him at Georgia, obviously, and
yeah,
he looks good. He looks like he's NFL ready. But as you pointed out, and we've discussed in the past, Singletary, once he finally got the full workload, did look significantly better last year.
Yeah, I mean, Zach Moss has got to go. I think he'll probably end up being a cut in camp and get signed by somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, that's something to watch. Jacksonville's second pick of the first round, they go with Devin Lloyd, linebacker out of Utah.
Yeah, I mean, Lloyd's a solid player. There's nothing really bad you can say about Devin Lloyd, other than that there were just guys better than him that got drafted ahead of him. I like Devin Lloyd. He's sideline to sideline. He's got great speed. He's got quickness. He can make all the tackles, and he's good in pass coverage too.
Yeah,
there are quite a few linebackers.
I'm looking.
Quite a few linebackers were taken, but also quite a few linebackers fell, particularly Nakobe Dean.
Yeah, speaking of Nakobe Dean, jumping right to the third round here, the speculation behind him was that his pectorals. He went and saw several doctors who say it's a pectoral strain, not a tear. It does not require surgery. And because he declined the surgery, a lot of NFL teams were scared to go after him. And then he falls to the Eagles at, what was it, 101, I think? No, not 101. 96, 97, wherever he falls to the Eagles. And the Eagles almost run to the podium to get Nakobe Dean. They considered drafting him in the second round and instead obviously took Kelsey's replacement.
I
can't think of his name.
From Nebraska, whose name all of a sudden has escaped me. Yeah, I just had it before we started this show.
That's not bothering me.
Yeah, no, and Kelsey handpicked that guy too. So
yeah.
Kelsey went out and said, "Hey, let's go and get this guy," which then refuted all my claims that we were going to draft Linderbaum from Iowa in the first round, which I'm fine with. If Kelsey is going to go out and say, "Let's get this guy," and he's going to take the time to train and mentor this dude, then I'm totally fine with that. Jason Kelsey's kind of earned that right from me. So as being an All-Pro center and a future Hall of Famer, hopefully.
Let's discuss really quick because I wanted to talk about Kenny Pickett, but I guess we don't really need to. We know about his pedigree out of Pittsburgh College.
I think his pedigree is just he's better than everybody else in this draft. I don't think there's too much to it other than Pittsburgh needs a quarterback, and he was the best one available for the draft.
Speaking of quarterbacks, Malik Willis is drafted by the Tennessee Titans. In an interview 3 or 4 days ago, Ryan Tannehill comes out openly and says, "I don't think it's my job to mentor this guy."
Let's talk about the Malik Willis pick first because the media had seriously overhyped him into being a top 10 pick, and it was never in the cards. We had a bit of a discussion of this in one of our leagues, and it was all media hype. People were like, "Damn, he was a projected top 10 pick." No, the media made him out to be a top 10 pick because he's got versatility and the potential to be that kind of guy. However, he has not shown flashes of being that guy. He has inconsistent mechanics. He's very raw as a quarterback. So he was never – no GM, no scout ever said they were coming out and thinking about taking him as a top 10 or even a first-round pick. So it was never in the cards for him. That being said, the Titans don't seem all that fond of Ryan Tannehill at this point, in all honesty. I think they're going to be looking to move off of him in the next year or two. They did sign him that contract extension, which I think started last year for 4 years. So I think they're looking to get out of that contract at some point down the road.
Yeah, maybe. I know that after he lost the playoff game last year or the year before, I forget. The
AFC title game against the Chiefs?
Yeah, the AFC title game against the Chiefs. He had a lot of issues. He was seeing doctors because apparently he didn't handle it so well.
Better than seeing ghosts.
It's better than seeing ghosts. Yeah, I honestly have nothing against Ryan Tannehill saying that. And it's just the truth. It's not his job to train his replacement. It's not. The same issue went on years and years ago when Favre was upset that they drafted Aaron Rodgers in the first round, and Favre said the same thing. That's not my job. Like, we have coaches, we have staff. Like, it's their job. Let them do it. I'm not mentoring this kid. So I have nothing against Ryan Tannehill coming out and saying that.
Oh, I agree wholeheartedly, especially if you're somebody who thinks you still got it. Like, Tannehill did not play bad last year, especially because Julio Jones was pretty much non-existent and non-factor all year, and A.J. Brown missed quite a few games. Cam Jurgensen, there we go. That's the name of the center from Nebraska. However, I have no issues with it. Ryan Tannehill can still play. He's better than at least 8 or 9 quarterbacks that I can think of off the top of my head. So it's not like that he is some, borderline scrub who is, going to be out of the league in the next year. If the Titans decide to move on from him, he will easily have a home next year. I'm definitely okay with that. Like I said, Tannehill's still got it. So it's not like the time's winding down on him. He's got plenty of time to show what he can do. And yeah, why not? Why not prove it? Spend your time proving yourself, not proving this other guy.
Yeah. So that's how we feel about that.
Yeah. But Kansas City, they had a fantastic draft, especially in the first round. People thought for sure that they were going to draft a wide receiver in the first round. They went Sky Moore in the second at 54 overall, ultimately, which I think is a great pick for them. I think Sky Moore is one of the big flyers under the radar for this draft. However, in the first round, they did go at 21 overall. They went Trent McDuffie, the cornerback from Washington, who has, great metrics. He's a big physical corner. He can run with the best of them. And then they went George Karlaftis from Purdue, the edge rusher, at 30 overall. They traded back into the first round to go ahead and get 2 of those picks. That was the trade from Tyreek Hill. So they went ahead and stole the Miami pick. Hey, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, we've discussed it before. Miami gave up way too much for Tyreek Hill, but what's up, Doc? Miami gave up way too much for Tyreek Hill. You and I have discussed it several times. We've mentioned it on the show. Obviously, we've talked about it in private. But because of that, because the Chiefs were so willing to move off of a talent like Tyreek Hill, they turn around and they get a draft that we rate as one of the top in the whole league this year. So I mean, like, big players, big moves sometimes pan out, and in this case, right now, it looks like for the Chiefs, it pans out.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think with the bolstering of the offenses, Vegas acquiring Devontae Adams, the Broncos getting Russell Wilson, that instead of attacking offense as well, they went ahead and got counters to those moves, whereas they're going to put a lot of faith in Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes to do what they can with what they have. Juju Smith-Schuster's not a bad receiver by any means necessary. Sky Moore can pan out to be a very good receiver. They still have probably the best tight end in football. So they have weapons that they can use. Maybe we'll actually see Clyde Edwards-Helaire be utilized. Ronald Jones can take some of the early down work. He's always been effective when he's been given the opportunity. So they have weapons in place. They have one of the best offensive minds to ever stand on the sideline of football. I think the Chiefs are in much better position than people realize, but that AFC West is going to be a dogfight.
Yeah, all 4 teams in that division are going to compete. And I mean, if we're looking at it as a whole from that division, The Raiders, I believe, are the weakest in that division, and I mean
that's so hard to say though.
And exactly, and that's even saying something versus the rest of the league because the Raiders are better than most of the teams in the league. So
I think the Broncos made the most significant jump because they legitimately only had a weakness at quarterback, and they were very hindered in their playbook and what they could do offensively without a decent quarterback. And they took a huge step forward. Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutherland should be doing great from this. Javonte Williams just got Melvin Gordon back. Yeah, fantasy managers are a little upset. However, it's a great move in real life football to have two very backs that can take on some kind of workload. You know, they almost split 50-50 on touches last year. So, and they were both very effective. That whole offense just got significantly better. And the problem has never been defense in Denver. They have always had a good defense. I expect that to happen again this year. I'd say they probably had the best defense in the division. And
I would agree with that.
Yeah, it's tough to rank these offenses right now because we haven't actually seen any of them in action. You know, Wilson and Jeudy could be way off from each other. They could not connect. There could be no chemistry there. Same thing with Pat Mahomes and his new receivers with Juju and Sky. Same thing with Derek and Devontae. You know, we haven't seen anything yet, so it's kind of hard to judge the offenses. But I would say the weakest defense in the division probably belongs to Kansas City just because a lot of their centerpieces, they have stars and then there's guys that are kind of like a little bit behind and they rely on them a little too much. So, and then they went and got two rookies in the first round. So who knows how they're going to play. A lot of question marks in that division, but one of them is not which division is going to be the toughest in football. It's easily going to be the AFC West.
Absolutely going to be the AFC West. I'm going through. I'm looking for the Broncos picks. They did pick up tight end out of UCLA, Greg Dulcich, to replace Noah Fant this offseason.
Well, he's going to challenge Albert O, too. I'm not even going to pronounce that guy's last name. I'm going to try, but they're both going to challenge each other for reps and snaps. And I think it'll pan out that Albert O will get a lot of the catches because he's a little bit more athletic of a tight end. But the fact they spent third-round draft capital on a tight end means that he's going to play.
That's what I was getting at. So the Broncos go out and spend third-round draft capital on a tight end, especially since now that Noah Fant went with Drew Lock over to Seattle in the trade for Russell Wilson. So I agree. He's going to get playing time. He's going to see the field. He's going to get some targets. And if he pans out, it could be really good. Russell Wilson has never been huge on throwing to tight ends, though. You're talking.
He hasn't had a tight end one receiver since Jimmy Graham the first year he signed with the Seahawks.
And then after that, Jimmy Graham really fell on his face hard. It pretty much proof in the pudding that Drew Brees made Jimmy Graham
he probably
rich.
feels really stupid for leaving New Orleans, man. I'll tell you.
How could he not?
Tight end money and went on with it.
Yeah, how could he not feel stupid? Drew Brees made him look like the best tight end in the league for 3 straight seasons, and then he decides to walk, and then he's one of the worst tight ends in football for the rest of his career at this point.
He's still in the league, so he's still one of the worst tight ends in football.
He's still in the Packers, isn't he?
No, he's with the Bears, I think. He's been with the Bears for a few years now. Now, that could be just Matt Nagy not knowing how to build an offensive scheme. That's a very possible explanation for that as well. But I guess time will tell because Matt Nagy is no longer in Chicago.
Yeah, I mean, Chicago didn't do poorly in the draft either. And I think it's really telling that they went offensive weapons in the first 3 rounds. Hold on.
Then Jermaine Johnson, the fact that I got to talk about the Jets again because they had an absolute steamroll of a draft. The fact that Jermaine Johnson, who was actually projected to be a top 10 pick by scouts and GMs, fell to number 27 is astounding. And the fact that the Jets went ahead, traded back in, and picked him up. The Jets won the draft. First off, you got Garrett Wilson, you've got Sauce Gardner, you've got Jermaine Johnson all in the first round. You've got arguably the most talented running back to come out of the last 2 classes in the second round. Yes, that includes your Javantes, your Najees, who else was drafted in the first round last year? Right after Najee Harris.
I don't remember. You're asking me a question I don't have an answer to.
Yeah, so there was a lot of running back talent last year, and Breece Hall is projected to be better than all of them. So now he comes into a situation where Michael Carter is already there, and Michael Carter showed flashes of being a valuable running back in his rookie year.
Breece Hall is more talented, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think they'll split work. I see like 60-40 in favor of Breece Hall in the rookie year. I can't see a situation unfolding like Jonathan Taylor or Najee Harris where they just absolutely dominate the touches in the backfield because Michael Carter, I think, is just as good of a pass catcher. Also, not to be noted, Michael Carter and Javonte Williams split touches 50-50 in college, and Michael Carter ended up with 2 1,000 rushing yard seasons because of it. So he's a guy who can do it in his own right. They just needed to build around him a little bit, and the Jets did just that.
Yeah, that Jets team is not going to be in the basement this season. And if they are,
who do you think finishes in last? I think the Jets still finish in last, but I think they just look better. I think they're too young to sit here and say like they'll be better, but I think they'll catch the Dolphins eventually, a couple of years.
Yeah, I think they're pretty close to catching the Dolphins. You can never rule out the Patriots because of Bill Belichick, and as long as he's there, you can't rule out the Patriots.
They still have a good defense. They went out and traded for Devontae Parker too. I mean, when he's healthy, he can actually play. But
that's true. And then you obviously have the Josh Allen and Sean McDermott-led Buffalo Bills, who are going to probably take that division. I think last season was a little bit of an anomaly for Mac Jones and the Patriots to compete and run record to record with the Bills through most of the season.
Would you say the AFC East is the second hardest division in football?
Yes, I would.
Yeah, then I'd say the NFC West.
Yeah, you have the Dolphins. That's what I was thinking was the NFC West. So you have the Dolphins who are competitive and are going to be competitive as long as Tua stays healthy. You've got the Bills, as I already talked about. You've got the Patriots that we talked about.
Patriots, Dolphins all rely on Tua. However, Tua, I mean, he's got a plethora of weapons at this point. I mean, if he can't get it done this year, then he's not going to.
It's much like the Jalen Hurts situation in Philadelphia. They put
we'll get to Philly in a little bit. We're not trying to look like homers who only talk about the Eagles. We could go on for them for years. So let's cover some other teams first. But I agree that I think it's the AFC East. You've got 3 perennial contenders there. The Bills pretty much solidified as a guaranteed playoff lock unless Josh Allen gets hurt. Then there's a world of issues. The Bill Belichick-led Patriots defense is always going to be good. The question is how can they do without Josh McDaniels there, and how much of a step does Mac Jones take in year 2? And then the Dolphins, and I give a slight edge to the Dolphins over the Jets. I'm not going to quite say the Jets are competitive this year because, like I just said, 3 of their top 4 guys really are all very young. Garrett Wilson's a rookie. Breece Hall's a rookie. Zach Wilson going into year 2. And he missed some games last year. So Corey Davis, the number 3 wide receiver, missed a lot of time last year. So there's some meshing to be done. And he's just being antsy. He wants me to play with him. And there's some meshing to be done in New York. So I'd give it another year before we start talking about the Jets as contenders in the division. But I'd say the AFC East is definitely the second hardest.
Yeah, and then I would agree with you there. And then we can move right on to the NFC West, where we're talking about the defending champion, LA Rams.
Seattle's irrelevant. I mean, they have weapons in place, but they're going to end up like the Broncos just were, where they have no quarterback play at all. Now, fortunately for Seattle, they're a couple quarterbacks that fill that hole right up next year, but who knows if they get them.
That's true. They get so they get Kenneth Walker in the first round. In the second round of the NFL draft this past season. Kenneth Walker isn't projected right this second to be the starter. However, I don't think
he gets most of the touches throughout the season.
I'm saying he probably by week 4 is the
uncertainty of Chris Carson's future with his neck injury and Rashad Penny and the fact that he only plays about 5 games a year. I think the door's wide open for Kenneth Walker to take the role and run with it. But.
Correct. But moving off of Seattle, you still have the defending champion Rams. You've got the Arizona Cardinals who have been competitive over the last couple of years.
Without D-Hop for the first 6 games.
Unless he appeals it. I think he can appeal and get it shortened. But yes, for right now, it's hey, Doc. It's 6 games for D-Hop. Obviously, they lose Christian Kirk to the Jaguars.
And I would gladly lose Christian Kirk to the tune of $21 billion a season. What an overpay. Really shot the wide receiver market this offseason.
Yeah, we'll get into the one I want to talk about. But yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. And then you have losing my train of thought all over the place today. I'm sorry.
We're talking NFC West.
Cardinals.
They still have Zach Ertz, who is one of the more valuable tight ends in football, and he'll be even more valuable without DeAndre Hopkins. They drafted Trey McBride, who's supposed to be an athletic beast. Personally, I think he's the second best tight end coming out of the next 2 draft classes, but that could be a little homer there. We'll get into that next year when we talk about the NFL draft. Yeah, it's the Cardinals are always going to compete, as long as Kyler Murray's there. And I'm not high on Kyler Murray strictly for durability. It's not a performance thing for me. I just think that he's a little too small for what he does, and
Yeah, he
ultimately
does.
that'll
He
hurt
does.
him down the run.
He puts up numbers, and he's athletic enough to get out of some
Has a
tricky
cannon
spots.
too.
And he's got that cannon attached to his right shoulder.
Yeah.
So I mean, I agree. I'm not performance wise. I've got nothing against Kyler Murray, but
I just think he's small.
Absolutely, he's smaller than I am. I'm 5. I mean, not even considering the weight that I put on. I'm 5'11". You're talking he's 5'9.5", I think. So he's
my height.
Yeah, he's a little guy. And I mean, you're talking big boy defensive linebackers. They're laying some hits on him, and it's starting to show.
He's not one of those Russell Wilson types. Russell Wilson learned how to slide. He uses baseball experience to his advantage, whereas Kyler Murray just doesn't seem to care. He runs like he's Josh Allen size, and that's just not the case.
Correct.
So that's my only concern with him. And then, we got San Francisco. And yes, San Francisco looked really bad last year. San Francisco had a world of injuries. I mean, they were just hurt. They were getting beat up on by – actually, they weren't getting beat up on by the Rams. They beat them both games in the and then they went all the way to the NFC Championship game, and it's hard to beat a team 3 times in a row.
It's hard to beat a
team 3 times in a row. It's so hard to do. That's why it's only happened about 4 or 5 times in all of the NFL history.
So Jimmy Garoppolo is still on that roster. Trey Lance was originally predicted to start the season, but again, you got Jimmy Garoppolo leading them to the NFC Championship game last year. Do you start the season with Trey Lance, or do you start the season with Jimmy G?
I think you have to start the season with Trey Lance. They gave up an arm and a leg to trade up in that spot to go get Trey Lance with the projection that he was going to sit last year and take over the role this year. Couple different options coming here. One, Jimmy Garoppolo is a post-June 1st cut, saves them his entire salary, minus the $8 million security. But I think the reason that they haven't announced him as a post-June 1st cut is because they're waiting for a team that needs a quarterback in, i.e. Seattle, Carolina, to come out and try and trade for him. Because if you come out and say you're cutting the guy right away, then you don't have to give up anything for him. But ultimately, I think it's going to be Trey Lance's team this year. I think he has the ability. Deebo Samuel was causing a little bit of drama over there, but it sounds like John Lynch and Deebo have gotten back together. It sounds like they're heading in the right direction in terms of getting Deebo the contract extension he wants, or supposedly not, because it sounds like that it wasn't a money issue.
Maybe. I know that he originally took off all evidence that he was a 49er, and then the other day he put it all back up on all of the social media accounts. I agree with you. I think Trey Lance needs to be starting this season, even if Jimmy Garoppolo is still on the roster. I know he took you to the NFC Championship game, but as you pointed out, they save his entire salary, so he likely gets cut regardless. Also, the Niners have former Philadelphia Eagles backup quarterback Nate Sudfeld on their roster, and John Lynch likes that kid. So there's no reason to keep Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster, and I agree with you that Trey Lance gets to start there. So having said that, there are teams, as you pointed out, Carolinas and the Seattles, who are going to be looking for a quarterback. Where do you think G ends up?
I think the most likely destination after the draft is Seattle. I think Carolina drafting Matt Corral in the 3rd round kind of sealed the deal there. They're going to, I think Corral and Sam Darnold are going to go after it in training camp, and obviously winner will take all. I actually predict that Sam Darnold will start the season. I don't think Corral wowed me enough to take that job right away. However, I could obviously see Sam Darnold losing that job into the season. They gave up a little bit to get Sam Darnold. They gave up 3 picks to get him, including a 2nd and a 6th. But I can't see him holding that job very long unless he really plays out of his mind. So, but I ultimately think Seattle's probably the most needy at quarterback for right now.
All right, there's another quarterback that the draft has come and gone and nobody even kicked the tires on. He's still in Cleveland. Do you think Cleveland holds on to Baker Mayfield because Deshaun Watson is likely to be suspended for the season?
Yeah, I think they have to until you get some clarity on the Deshaun Watson situation. I personally think that he gets suspended 8 games, but I wouldn't be surprised if he got suspended the full season. I think they have to. I think Baker's value kind of changes with that situation. If you think you're only going to play him 8 games, if you think you'll need him the whole season. That's such a strange situation, your organization doesn't really want you here, but you're going to have to play for them anyway. And because it's a contract year, you're kind of going to have to play well for an organization that doesn't really want you. It's a super weird situation. So his future squarely rests on his shoulders, and the fact that there's been no interest for Baker at all goes to show you what the QB market looks like. There's very lateral moves, the fact that there's been no interest for Jimmy G over Drew Lock, or no interest for Baker Mayfield over Sam Darnold or Daniel Jones even. A lot of these teams are realizing that it's just worth it to stick with their investments with what they got and reinvest through the draft and not trade for quarterbacks. I partially think it has a lot to do with Sam Darnold's trade last year. Sam Darnold was terrible in New York, and they ended up giving up a second, a sixth, and like a future fourth for him.
Yeah, that's true. And to answer your question, Ken, or Dad, however we're going to play this game here, as Ryan pointed out, it's a contract year. Baker's going to play for somebody else next year, and he's got zero shot at making any kind of money if he comes out and just completely craps the bed because he doesn't want to play for Cleveland. So he doesn't have a choice. So whatever games that Deshaun Watson is suspended for, it's going to be Pop. Okay, got it. It's going to be Baker's team up until Deshaun comes back. Obviously, Deshaun is the better talent of the two quarterbacks. There's nobody denying that. No. There's just a ton of baggage that comes with Deshaun Watson. So Cleveland not going to be undersold on a trade for Baker Mayfield because they know they need him.
Yeah, it's a weird situation. Like I said, he's going to have to play hard for an organization he knows that doesn't want him.
Correct.
So, but any real surprises coming from the draft? Let's just get right to it. Let's go ahead and talk about the Eagles. The Eagles were a huge winner of the draft, despite having 3 first-round picks as of a few weeks ago, and they only picked one time, which we kind of predicted would happen. We knew that they would trade at least one of those first-round picks. Kind of hard to pay 3 first-round picks at once, which would have happened down the road eventually. But the pick they make was 13 overall, Jordan Davis, defensive tackle, who we sniped from Baltimore. It was obvious from the get-go that Baltimore wanted him. They were going to draft him. He was going to be the next Haloti Ngata. Didn't happen.
Yeah, so the Eagles trade up to 13, obviously. They used their 15 pick and then a third-round pick, I believe, to move up to number 13, and they take Jordan Davis. I'm a Georgia fan. I watched a lot of Jordan Davis this past season, and he and another guy that we got, which we'll get into in a few minutes. We've already mentioned his name earlier in the show, Nakobe Dean. Were phenomenal. Jordan Davis was the main piece, the coup de grace of that of college football title Georgia defense, and like I said, Jordan Davis led the way, and pairing him with Fletcher Cox and then all the edge rushers that we have on the outside, I think the Eagles defense just got scary. It's not really anything else for me to say about it other than I think the Eagles defense just got scary. Yes, they have holes in the secondary, big holes in the secondary, but as the 2017 Eagles showed you, if you can get home with the front four, the secondary is going to look better.
I think that 2017 secondary as a whole might have been slightly better. I mean, no cornerback on that roster was better than Slay, but
we had Malcolm Jenkins and then Russell Douglas, and I get it.
Yeah, I think collectively they were a little bit better of a unit. Ultimately, we just need to wind back the clock, bring back Mike Lewis, Sheldon Brown, Lito Shepard, and Brian Dawkins, call it a day.
Yeah, let's just do that.
So I was shocked by this pick. It's a very un-Howie Roseman-like pick in the sense that he has never drafted a defensive tackle that big. Even Milton Williams was probably the biggest defensive tackle he's ever drafted at 320. So the fact that he went out and got a 6'7", 340-pound defensive tackle who models like a nose tackle in the NFL, it was a little strange to me at first. I was shocked by the pick. I'm not doubting Jordan Davis's talent. I just thought scheme-wise it was a little bit of an issue. However, I did read a tweet last week from your brother and my best friend, Tim Brandt, that said Brandon Graham's all but confirmed that the Eagles are going to switch to a 3-4, which makes the draft picks of Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis a little bit less surprising. Because that's, like I said, Jordan Davis profiles more as a nose tackle anyway, and Brandon Graham played the 3-4 in college when he was at Michigan. As an outside linebacker, he moved to defensive end when he came into the NFL. But it wouldn't shock me if they moved Fletcher Cox to one of those DNs and rotated Hargrave and Williams and Davis in the middle, Brandon Graham on the other side. It wouldn't surprise me if they did something like that.
A lot of depth. They have a lot of depth.
And the front seven got a little bit better. I wouldn't call this defense scary. To me, scary defenses are effective at all 3 levels, but the secondary has some huge issues that need to be filled. The Eagles front office is much higher on the safeties than a lot of other people are, and I'm guessing they're a lot higher on quarterback number 2, which I'm assuming would be Zach McPherson, the draft pick last year out of Texas Tech. But I'm not sold. So I see something, I'm not sold.
I'm actually relieved to hear that John Gannon has decided to go to a 3-4 scheme. He looked lost at times calling games last year with the 4-3 defense, and he just didn't.
I think it's just a rumor for right now, but it wouldn't surprise me. It's just based on the draft picks, like Nakobe Dean's a rushing outside linebacker. You don't see that too much in the 4-3. See that way more in the 3-4. So
and you went and traded for a couple of stand-up linebackers that are also good edge rushers. Kazier White.
Kazier White is a good inside linebacker. He had 144 tackles last year in San Diego. I think San Diego plays, or not San Diego, the Chargers play the 3-4 as well. So.
Yeah, so it wouldn't surprise me if they do go that route. And again, they have a lot of stand-up rushers. And
maybe make Derek Barnett an outside linebacker too.
They need to just not have Derek Barnett. But we'll.
I mean, at this point, there aren't too many better options. Unfortunately,
no,
I just need to chill out with penalties, man. Oh, good God!
I know there's the video running around of Nick Sirianni after I think it was the Dallas game, and it was. Sorry, my laptop is dying. Give me 1 second.
But yeah, anyway, like I was saying, the Eagles are huge winners of this draft, not because of their picks, but because of the pick they didn't make. They were on the clock at 18, they were next on the clock at 18. And this, Howie Roseman flexed hard on everybody because not only did they move 101 overall in the 3rd round and 18 overall in the 1st round for A.J. Brown, a young upcoming wide receiver who is a stud when he plays. He just has some hamstring issues. But at the same time that he negotiated that trade, he was also on the phone with A.J. Brown's agent trying to negotiate a contract extension because there was going to be no trade if they couldn't get a contract extension. Well, as it came out, Tennessee Titans offered A.J. Brown $16 million a year. And this is why I say Christian Kirk screwed everybody, because Kirk got $21 million a year from Jacksonville. Terrible signing, by the way. Christian Kirk has proven nothing to get that insurmountable amount of money.
Yeah, I agree.
But I'll get into that in a second. So he makes 2 deals at one time, all while 17's on the clock. And then as soon as 18 comes up, he signs a contract extension. It comes out that they acquired A.J. Brown. Titans are on the clock. They go ahead and get Treylon Burks, who I'm very high on, by the way. I believe in his talent. I believe that he landed in the best spot that can secure that talent. Just because Robert Woods is on the other side when he comes back from his ACL injury. So you have a true veteran receiver who's done very well in this league for some time in a run-first offense. So there's no pressure on Treylon Burks like there is a Drake London per se, where he's going to come in and be the number 1 guy right away. It's just going to be him, Kyle Pitts, and maybe the magic of Cordell Patterson again. So there's much higher expectations for Drake London than there are Treylon Burks, and I think that's why Treylon Burks will be more successful, especially right away.
Yeah, and I agree with the take on Treylon Burks. We did a fantasy draft earlier today, and I told you and Timmy that I was taking Treylon Burks. If he had fallen to me at 104, he was obviously already gone, and I ended up with Sky Moore. But, yeah.
That was a surprising pick, although I'm very high on Sky Moore, so I don't really hate it.
They said it in the group chat. I drafted on scheme and situation more than I did on talent of individual person.
But it's not like Sky Moore's not talented.
And I'm with you, obviously. I took him at 104.
And honestly, his whole downside is he didn't play at some big college.
Yeah,
all of his combine metrics were good. All of his route running was good. The way that it broke down was he just absolutely dominated slightly lower competition. That's just what Sky Moore was.
And it happens. But I agree that Treylon Burks is in probably the best situation for a wide receiver coming into the league right now. Yeah, so we're about 40 minutes in. Let's just do our Eagles for about 15 minutes and then get out of here.
Yeah, so Dallas. Let's talk about the NFC East then. We'll just break down the NFC East. Dallas took a big fat L. They're one of my top 3 losers. They had a terrible draft. I don't know what was going on. And I'm not saying that because I'm an Eagles hater. I'm saying that because multiple times there were much better players available to be drafted. Jermaine Johnson being one of them after they just lost Randy Gregory, and they didn't draft him. They skipped over Nakobe Dean. They drafted Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver, way late in the draft. Their drafting scheme made no sense. It didn't line up with anything. And And it didn't look like that everybody in the Dallas Cowboys war room was on the same page either. There was some frustration expressed from Stephen Jones, as you saw on live television. The Cowboys get like a D- for this draft. It was so confusing. They didn't fill any actual team needs, which is concerning. But the Giants also had actually the Giants were 360. The Giants had a pretty good draft. Now, the fact that they went out and declined Daniel Jones's fifth-year option is a good first step. However, the fact Daniel Jones, the fumbling machine, is still the quarterback of that team. Tyrod Taylor did sign in the offseason. Maybe he'll compete for some reps, but ultimately I think they're going to ride with Daniel Jones. It's mind-blowing. I can't get over the Cowboys draft. But anyway, the Giants had an excellent draft. They went and got Kayvon Thibodeau at 5 overall, I believe.
Yeah. I had already discussed that one, how much I wanted Kayvon Thibodeau to fall to the Eagles. But yeah, the Giants.
So Kayvon Thibodeau, him and Jordan Mailata are going to go at it for many, many years. Jordan Mailata only being 25, and he just got that 4-year deal. And then they went and got their own left tackle, Evan Neal. Excellent draft pick. Evan Neal's a beast. He's gonna be just as good, if not better, than Jordan. He's just a monster on the left side. So they got protection for their quarterback. Maybe that'll help Daniel Jones a little bit, but ultimately I think until they fix the quarterback issue, which will probably come next year, they're still going to be in the bottom for me. I think Washington had an draft. I'm surprised that they drafted Jahan Dotson over Treylon Burks. Dotson's got some talent. I don't think it was like that. I think I would have personally taken Sky Moore over Jahan Dotson, but that's just me. That maybe they have some tape that I haven't seen. Maybe they got some studies I haven't seen. And I don't hate Jahan Dotson. I just think that there were better options available at the time, including Treylon Burks. Christian Watson would have been a better ceiling player. And, especially because no matter who they drafted, they were coming in and being the number 2, very comfortably the number 2 behind Terry McLaurin.
Correct,
Which they still haven't had a contract extension for him, by the way. So, however, they did improve their quarterback situation. They did get Carson Wentz now. Yes, there's a lot of hate for Carson Wentz out there, but a lot of it seems to be surrounded by the fact that he's just a sourpuss and a bad teammate. It's not so much a talent issue rather than it is like a crybaby, like this whole – it seems like he seems entitled that because he was the number 2 overall pick at some point that he's owed something.
Yeah, I mean, it came out of Indy that he just was not a very good teammate, even though some of his teammates had come out and said that he was fine. But very similar comments to what came out of Philadelphia the year before: lack of accountability, couldn't be coached, stuff like that. And Indianapolis even said that had they made the playoffs,
they were gonna trade him anyway,
moving Carson Wentz away anyway. And listen, I mean, 3,800 yards. What was it? 27 and 8.
He was efficient. I mean, he didn't do anything mind blowing. But when Jonathan Taylor's taking 60% of the offensive snaps, I could play decent quarterback for the Indianapolis Colts.
Yeah. So is he an improvement over Taylor Heinicke, whatever we're calling him? Probably.
I think talent-wise, yeah. And I think that he's in a situation now where he'll kind of feed his own ego. Like Washington, their best player is a receiver that he's probably going to end up force-feeding. It's the best receiver, in my opinion, that Carson Wentz has had throughout his career.
I would agree with that.
I think he's slightly better than Michael Pittman. The running backs, you think about it, and it's like, oh, they've taken a huge step back, and I disagree. I don't hate Antonio Gibson. J.D. McKissick can catch passes, and they just drafted Brian Robinson to, as Ron Rivera described it, play Jonathan Stewart and D'Angelo Williams with Antonio Gibson. So, and they were a very formidable duo back in the early days for Carolina. So that being said, I think there's a lot of pressure off Carson Wentz, but at the same time, he's in a position where he can be the best player in the offense. So we'll see how that develops. And then we go to the Eagles. Eagles are the big winners of the NFC East.
Yeah, look, there's not
argue that the Eagles were the biggest winners of the NFC.
You really could argue that. Like we already discussed, the Jets and Chiefs had a really good draft, but I think right behind them are the Eagles. Again, you're talking the picks that they didn't make. They didn't go out and get ridiculous, hopeful talents. They get A.J. Brown with the picks. They get out of the first. They only come out of the first round with one pick, and again, he's a monster. Nakobe Dean falls to them in the third round, which is wonderful. You get Chase and Kelsey's replacement, and Kelsey has already come out and said, like, yeah, this is the next guy. This is the next me. Like, we're doing this. And then you add some secondary help in the later round that could pan out.
The undrafted pick, nobody's talking about it enough. The undrafted Carson Strong from Nevada, who at some point was being talked about by the media again as being like a late first, early second round pick. He has the arm strength. He has the arm talent. He's a little bit raw in terms of reading defenses, but he's got statue problems. He's the exact opposite of Jalen Hurts. He just kind of stands there, which in the Eagles defense, they have a pretty good offensive line. So that may not be terrible. However, you can't do that at the NFL or really any level and be truly successful. So he's got some work to do to develop as a quarterback. However, I'm not saying he's going to challenge Jalen Hurts for a spot by any means necessary. However, he could potentially earn the number 2 quarterback role if they decide to move off of Gardner Minshew.
Which I was about to bring up right now. Minshew is a trade chip. You're talking he's 70% completion percentage over his career. That's extremely efficient. And he's proven that he can win games. It's unfortunate that he was with, the Jaguars and then only got to play 2 games here with the Eagles. But he's proven that he can win games. So Gardner Minshew, do you value him above or below in terms of trade bait because he won't cost as much as these other 2 quarterbacks, Jimmy G and Baker Mayfield? Turn that commercial down.
Yeah, an ad popped up on the website that I was looking at. I was like, what? But do I value Gardner Minshew over Carson Strong?
No. Gardner Minshew, in terms of being able to trade for, because he won't demand as much as Baker Mayfield or Jimmy Garoppolo, do you value his ability or his availability from the Eagles in a trade higher than you would Jimmy G or Baker Mayfield? Meaning I'm the team coming to you asking you.
Part of me believes if that were the case that Gardner Minshew would be gone by now. Maybe the Eagles will really stand.
So what Ryan is likely saying here is that the Eagles may have been really standing strong on what they want until
after the draft, because without Carson Strong, they would have only had 2 quarterbacks on the roster. So now that they have a quarterback, maybe he competes through camp. If he shows enough that he can get that number 2 spot, maybe they're more than willing to go ahead and deal with Gardner Minshew to a team that has 2 slouching quarterbacks, like a Drew Lock, Geno Smith situation. I doubt they would deal him inside the division, but Daniel Jones and Tyrod Taylor, maybe Carolina's not impressed with either of their guys. There's options there, but I think that they needed to go out to the draft, and I think that they nailed that. There's a lineman for the Eagles that picked up an undrafted free agency period as well. Last name starts with a W. He got like a 98.8 grade out of 100 on PFF for his run blocking last year in college. So this dude's a certified beast. He's huge. I know you want to go out, buddy. I want to go out too.
We're almost done, Doc. We're almost done.
He's a cutie. He's just very curious. But anyway, back to the draft. Any thoughts?
Just so you guys know, fans and everybody, is Carson Strong was named the top undrafted free agent by Pro Football Focus, and again, he's an Eagle. But yeah, so that's great for the Eagles, and again, that gives us options with Minshew, and hopefully we can get something in return for him, maybe a third or a pair of 3rd-round picks or something for him. Ryan clearly is in a situation where he needs to go, so I want to say goodbye. Thank you, everybody, for joining us on BSing Sports, where again we do a little BSing and a whole lot of sports. Ryan, closing notes.
Yeah. Hey, do you want to get in the camera, buddy? Is that what you want? Yeah, you do. All right. So long, guys. Thanks for tuning into this week's episode. Sorry it's cut short. I have a little puppy here that's antsy to go outside. So I'll talk to you guys later for sure. Bill, thank you for getting on. It was pretty last minute notice. So
it was, yeah. But
a whole lot of BS and even more sports. That's what we should say, because we really don't have any topics for these shows. In all honesty, we're not as rigid as we used to be when we first started making the Google Docs.
That's true. Yeah. All right. Winging it seems to work out. We flow together. All right. Again, everybody, have a good day.